Now for our second loop, we're going to actually do some calculations inside each loop. And so that's going to add a little bit more complexity and a little bit more of a challenge in how we think through this. So this function we're going to call square n times. And the idea is that we'll take some starting number and we'll square it a certain number of times. So for example, here we could take 5 squared, that's 1 time, and then we can take that answer and then square it. So when 5 is squared 2 times, our answer should be 625. Now let's go ahead and see how we do that with our looping. So let's flip back over. Let's start a new function. We'll call this function square n times. We're going to do our input number as integer, the same as we did before. We're going to set square n times equal to our answer. All right. Of course, if we're going to do that, we need to dim answer as a double. That way we have something to assign it to. Now we need to start doing our loop. Now in our previous loop, you can see above, we used I as our looping variable. That's a very common convention, again, in math and in programming. I don't love it, though. I like to have my variables be more meaningful so I know what they are. So I'm going to dim a variable loopnum as integer. All right, that's telling me the loop number that I'm in within my for loop. So now I will say for loopnum equals 1 to input number, then next loopnum. So that tells me that the loopnum variable is what I'm incrementing from 1 to 2 to 3, etc. as I go through this loop. So it's just replacing I as that variable. Again, this is just a little bit more informative about what it is exactly that I'm looping over. All right, now as far as what's going to go in the middle, this is where we put our code. All right, so our code is going to be to take some of that input number, right? And in this case, we actually, I'm confusing myself because we actually need 2 inputs here. We need an input number, so like that 5 that we started with, but we also need, we'll call it num loops as integer. So we need to know how many loops that we should go through. So we need both the input number that we're going to end up squaring and that number of loops for how many times we want to do it. And let's actually, instead of calling it num loops, let's call it num times. So it's the number of times we're going to square it. And so here we're going to take num times. That's how many times we're going to go through the loop. So we're going to loop num from 1 to the number of times. All right. Now what should our calculation be? Well, our calculation should be that our answer is equal to that input number squared. All right. So we can take that input number and we should square it. Now let's see what happens when we do that. So let's jump back over. We're going to write square n times. Let's use our input 5, our value at 2, enter, and we got the number 25. All right, we expected to get 625, and we didn't get it. So let's go figure out why. So as we flip back over, let's just talk through what happens each loop through. So we start out, our input number is 5, our number of times is 2. All right, and as we talk through this, we say, all right, we initiate answer, that's now equal to 0. We initiate loopnum, that's equal to 0. We now say loopnum is equal to 1. All right, it's equal to 1. And now we say answer is equal to our input number, 5 squared is 25. Great. Everything's good so far. Next loopnum. Loopnum goes from 1 to 2. So we go through and we say, all right, our answer is now equal to input number, 5 squared equals 25. So we didn't actually take the previous answer and square it again. That's where our problem came in. And if to figure that out, what can be really nice is to use that debug.print. So let's debug.print, and the first thing we're going to print is our loopnum. And then let's also print our answer. All right, so we're going to clear our immediate window down here. Make it a little bigger to see it, and let's run it again just so we can see exactly what it's printing out here. So we come in, rerun it, we still get 25. We actually ran this function as well, so let's get rid of that one real quick. That way our print window is a little bit cleaner and clear. Do it one more time here, sorry about that. And now we see that the first loop through, we got the number 25. The second loop through, we also got the answer 25. So we got to figure out a way to fix that. And the problem here is that we're not building on itself. We're not taking the previous answer and squaring it again. And so instead of squaring the input number, what we need to square is answer. And here we're going to see kind of an odd formula that doesn't make a lot of sense from a mathematical perspective, right? It's only true that answer is equal to answer squared if answer is equal to 1. But that's not what the computer is trying to do here. What the computer is doing, and the way that the programming language works, is it's not testing mathematically is this statement true, because many times it will be false. Instead, it's saying, do whatever is on the right-hand side. Do this calculation that is answer squared. Take whatever that value is that you calculate and assign it to the variable answer. All right, so for example, if instead we said, let's just do answer plus 1, then whatever answer was, it just adds 1 to it. So this is a way to take whatever the answer is and add 1 each time through the loop. Here we're squaring. So let's back that off and let's try it again. So now let's see what happens. So we switch back, let's clear our immediate window. Let's run it again. Now we get the answer of 0. All right, what's going on? Well, each time through the loop we get 0, and that's because when we initiate answer, it's equal to 0. So that tells us, oh, let's start with answer is equal to our input number. So at the beginning we set answer equal to 5. The first loop through we should square it to get to 25. The second loop through we should square that to get to 625. All right, we think we've troubleshot our way through. Let's go back and check. We hit enter. Let's go check our output. So the first time through we get our 25. The second time through we get 625. That's looking good. Let's go see if we can do bigger numbers. Now let's try instead 4 times to square. This is going to be a big number. Really big, 152 billion. Let's check our path. First time through we get 25. Second time through we get 625. Third time through 390,000. Fourth time through 152 billion. So it's keeping track each time through the code. It's going ahead and applying that squaring to whatever the previous answer was. So it takes that previous value of answer, squares it, takes that new value it's calculated, and assigns that back to the answer variable. If we think about the locker analogy, right, the computer goes to the locker, takes whatever's in the locker out of it, does something to it, in this case squares it, and then puts it right back in. And then the next time through the loop, it takes it out, squares it, puts it back in. So that's the way the loop is working to basically increment up the answer value as we go through each successive loop.